personal branding is really how you show up every day, right? And in an organization that collaborates and has to drive innovation, I think it's critically important to build the relationships and the trust, right? So you could have those open, authentic conversations and people know where you're coming from. Like not a predisposed point of view on something, opening it up to thinking differently and really influencing people and having them be willing to lean in and do that. So I think the branding is very important because it's a representation of you. And I think it absolutely boils down to how you show up every day.
Welcome back to another episode of the Innovate on Purpose podcast, hosted by Matt Mueller,
best-selling author of The Mindful Innovator and Rethink Retail's top retail expert.
We help retail leaders find clarity so they can grow their businesses purposefully.
We will uncover mindful tips, innovative solutions, and purposeful leadership advice and strategies that you can apply immediately to your retail innovation. Are you ready to innovate on purpose?
Hey, before we jump into the episode today, I just wanted to say thank you for hitting the play button. You being here fires me up, and I cannot wait to share with you the insights that are going to make a difference in your business. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and leave a review so I can reach as many retail leaders as possible. They too need to hear this. Okay, let's do it. From Rich Bruno Consulting, and then formerly of Johnson and Johnson.
Yep.
A former executive.
I was at director level, middle management.
Okay, so
you can say former director, executive, whatever you want. It's fine.
Okay, all right. Hello and welcome to another episode of Innovate on Purpose. Today we have a very special guest here today, someone that I've been friends with for quite some time now, and always love having a conversation with him. He is Rich Bruno. He's from Rich Bruno Consulting and also formerly from an executive over at Johnson & Johnson. So we have those CPG tied together. So Rich, thank you so much for coming to the show today.
I am really happy to be with you, Matt, and share those same feelings. We have a good relationship that we're building, and I think we think alike and all that, and I'm happy to be with you and your audience today.
Thank you. Yeah, again, thanks for coming. And I'm really excited about this conversation because we're looking at innovation here a little bit differently today. It's like we usually hit innovation head on and what are the tactical things that we can do to be more innovative in our stores or innovative with our brands and products. But I want to talk about the person, like the person behind the innovation. And I think that's something that really just goes not talked about as often, but what does it really take for innovation to thrive within the organization? Like a lot of people think it's about, having great ideas or the best product, but really it's about, I think, having a good personal brand, which is like a really weird thing to say when you just say that, right? It's like, but Rich, can you tell me a little bit about personal branding within an organization for a person and how that can influence innovation?
Yeah, I think we each have our own unique brand. And I do talk about this with groups about building your personal brand. It has a lot of elements, but to answer your question, the personal branding is really how you show up every day. Right. And in an organization that collaborates and has to drive innovation, I think it's critically important to build the relationships and the trust. Right. So you can have those open, authentic conversations and people know where you're coming from. Like not a predisposed point of view on something, opening it up to thinking differently and really influencing people and having them be willing to lean in and do that. So I think the branding is very important because it's a representation of you. And I think it absolutely boils down to how you show up every day. It has a lot of components to it. But I think one of the big ones is authenticity. Like I've always focused on networking and relationships. That's really what I'm about. And I think that's always served me because people know where I'm coming from, what I'm about. There's no ulterior motive. It's just who I am. So branding is very important.
Yeah, it's like I think back, when I was in the CPG, in the hallway of those CPG companies, and I remember specifically we had this one concept that was going into market, and it was being pitched by a particular person in the organization, and everyone was like, I really don't know if that's going to work. That doesn't really make much sense. But then all of a sudden it came from the other side of the hall and that person had a little bit better of a relationship with people. And all of a sudden it became this great idea that, yeah, we should definitely all get behind this and start to push that into market. But it was just so interesting to see this, like basically the same concept, the same ideas coming from two different voices, and one where it was just accepted where versus the other where it wasn't. And I think you hit on a couple of attributes there of trust and authenticity as being some of those attributes that go into that personal branding. Like the person that it wasn't going well for didn't necessarily have the trust of people, and didn't communicate well with others, where the other one had great relationships. So it is something how the relationship does help you within those organizations.
If I can just add to that, because I think a lot of this comes back to leadership as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So think about really effective leaders. I believe the most effective leaders have certain traits, and it starts with the engagement and relationships you have in your team members. Right. If they're going to trust and follow you, you've got to build a rapport with them. You have to be speaking the same language, understand one another. Right. And they need to get to know you and who you are. You're consistent and fair, but you have empathy. But at the end of the day, you could influence them to drive an outcome if they trust you. And whether you're leading a group or you're an individual contributor on a project team, same thing, right? I've led many projects. I was a project manager in 2 different companies. And the biggest, most impactful trait that I had that I think helped me is that I was a relationship-centered person. I was very engaging. I collaborated with them in a genuine way. And I think that went a long way because they came to know who I was. Goes back to the branding. But
Yeah.
okay, I wouldn't probably have been as capable of influencing them to take an action and to drive an outcome, whatever it is, if I was not well liked, or if they didn't understand me, or if they thought I had some other intentions.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes so much sense. It's like when someone is in an organization and like they want to understand like where is their personal brand? Like, what's the status of their personal brand? How are some of the ways that leaders can kind of start to assess that on their own?
How could leaders assess an individual's personal brand?
Yeah. So if I wanted to go and say, hey, what is my personal brand within the organization? How do I start thinking about that?
I think you start thinking about that as to how you speak and your body language and how you show up, like I said earlier, on a consistent basis, right? Imagine, just as an example, imagine you're going, and my boss actually had used this example in the past, it's perfect. Imagine you go to the coffee machine in the kitchen. You're at work and in a group environment, and I don't know, a senior leader comes in and goes to get their coffee. He or she, let's say he's a CEO, and says, "Hey, Rich, how you doing?" Well, I'm going to be ready to say, "I'm doing great." I'm not going to say, "Oh, I'm really busy. I have so many meetings today. Oh, this day is never going to end." Now, I might feel some of that, but how am I showing up as my best self? Your attitude and perspective make a big difference. So if you're looking for like criteria, like how does a leader assess? And I've done a lot of this in terms of hiring and all that. I feel like the soft skills are very important, right? Part of the brand is your ability to work with others, collaborative capabilities or skills, being a good listener, not having to be right all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That grace ties right into innovation. It's not my way and no way. You know what? Maybe I don't have the best idea. Or maybe I think my idea is the best, but I'm willing to go with someone else's. Someone who's got that give and take, pleasant to be around, that person is also part of creating a great culture in your environment. I want to show up at a place that I want to be at, that I want to go to work and put my best effort in. And that doesn't happen if you have the wrong people. So when you think about branding, it's your attitude and perspective, how you show up every day, how you communicate and engage, and your willingness to work in a group setting to do things like driving innovation. And that comes back to sometimes taking a back seat. You don't have to be the decision maker. You don't have to own the outcome. It doesn't have to be your name on it. I know a lot of leaders that will come up with great ideas. They'll assign one of their people to it and they'll give it to them as the champion for that idea. And they'll recognize them as the champion for that idea, even to the point of getting awarded recognition for that idea.
Yeah. All
There's
boats rise
certain
with the tide,
leaders,
right?
they don't make it about them. It's never about them.
Mm-hmm.
The servant leader makes it about everyone else. And I think someone who shows up with those attributes as a servant leader is a great group collaborator in innovation because they
Yeah.
won't make it all about them.
Yeah. Before we actually pressed record here, you were talking about like where the leader that doesn't feel like they have all the answers, and the kind of the curiosity was something that you talked about, like, asking those questions. That's something that definitely resonates with me as well. Because you tell me a little bit more about, like, what kind of questions should you be asking? Like, when someone comes to you with, and you're kind of don't really agree with it, but how should you really approach it?
Well, one of the things I always like to do is, first of all, really effective leaders ask the right questions, right? And they're provocative to have the person that brings it actually owning the outcome and the solution. So almost turning it back into a question. Okay, you come to me and say, "Hey, Rich, I got this challenge, ABC, I'm not really sure I could take any of the three options." You're coming to me maybe looking for me to give you the answer. I'm not going to give you the answer. Not right away. I'm going to say, "What do you think?" Well, then you go on. Maybe I take A because of this, B because of that. C, as I think about it, probably not the best idea. Now you're driving the solution on your own, right? My role as the leader is to help you develop, help remove obstacles. If you say, "I can't do A because John Smith in the other department says I can't do it," I'll go talk to John Smith. Like, so I should be the barrier breaker. I
Hmm.
shouldn't be, "Oh, come to me for all the answers." And so the questions you ask are, in a general response to your question, is more provocative around putting it on them. What do you think? Or have you considered? Have you considered the consequence of A? Let's talk about that a little bit. And so we collaborate a little bit on the decisions. I do that a lot as a coach. I coach people. It's like teaching someone to fish. If they come to me and say, "I'm really struggling with managing all my time. Geez, I never have time for all the things I want to do." I have them break it down. I say, "Well, what are you doing today? What's been working? What's not working? Why do you think that's not working? What could you do differently right now?" These are all questions. I
Yeah.
didn't give them a single answer.
And it's hard to think about those questions on your own. I do the same thing too with my clients, and when I was leading teams, it's just like where you're so stuck in the middle of it. Sometimes you're not able to even really assess those types of things. So it's so important to be the one that brings those questions. So, and that's really a great way to build your personal brand, to say, wow, that person is really smart, and you don't even have to say anything. You don't have to even like make any statements. You just have to ask questions. But all of a sudden now, that's a smart person. I'm going to follow their lead when it comes to innovation.
Yeah. You also mentioned before we hit record about presence.
Hmm.
And I think another really great leadership trait, which can carry into a group setting with innovation, right, is being a great listener. Just you don't have to say anything. You're just available to absorb what someone's wanting to share with you. Sometimes just by expressing it drives an outcome
Hmm.
without you even having to make a decision or a statement. So I think listen first without being ready to drive. Okay, you wanted something. Here's the answer. I got it for you. Okay, no, just listen, and then you just ask simple questions like we talked about before that could help them to arrive at the conclusion that they are hoping to get to.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Actually reminds me of a story when I was on the innovation team at the CPG company that I worked for. I had a mentor. She was the former VP of Starbucks, VP of innovation at Starbucks, and I expressed to her like how inadequate I felt at the time, and I was like, hey, I'm like, I don't say enough in these meetings in the business, and I feel like being an innovative leader, I should be leading these conversations and saying a lot more. And she's like, no, no, not at all. Like, in fact, like, people listen to you more because you don't speak that much. It's like the other leaders that speak up all the time and they're saying, hey, you should do this or you should do that. It gets lost in all the noise. So it was so interesting about, her kind of feedback. It made me think differently about, oh, I don't need to be the loudest in the room or the one with the first opinion. In fact, I shouldn't be. I should be the one that's sitting back and taking it all in and only making those statements when absolutely necessary.
I like that a lot. I think it's important to have a point of view.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean you have to have all the answers. Doesn't mean you have to be the loudest voice either,
Yeah,
because that ends up getting tuned out.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, Jane's going to speak up again. This is the 10th thing she said. She actually said, out of those 10 things, she said the same thing 5 times. I've already shut Jane off. Jane's not even in the audience anymore. Like, that's what happens with some people. They have this strong personality and they have to be heard. I think a more effective approach in a group setting for innovation, I will say myself, I don't think I'm the most creative person on the planet, right? So I don't
I
think I'm going to
disagree.
have the best ideas, right? So I go in knowing that but you know what? I'm going to hear something I might want to weigh in.
Hmm.
I'm confident in weighing in with a point of view. That's it. Just have a point of view.
Yeah, I disagree. I think you're totally creative. Every single conversation that we have, I always leave that room with an additional thing on my to-do list because of your creativity. So thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you.
Yeah. What else do like leaders within these corporations need to do to innovate more purposely?
I think I want to go back to influencing. You know, bringing the masses together, whoever need to be the decision makers, and being able to influence that dialogue such that not you're owning the outcome for them, but that you're engaging them and inviting them into an open discussion, right? Sometimes you just need to be like the conductor, right? So you're leading the orchestra, but you're not at the primary, source of making a decision. You're entrusting other people to do that. And you know what? Really good leaders empower other people who they know are very capable, show the trust in them to make those decisions, and have the relationships with those people that they're open to sharing it. I go back to the relationship and networking, right? I think that's super important. Today's most effective leader is relatable to the people they work with. If you look at generational changes, and I'm not an HR expert in the Gen Y, Z, forget all that for a second. But I did come up through organizations, dating myself now, right? So, it was a much more structured, different, less engaging kind of climate. Like you had the hierarchy, and that person
Yeah.
at the top was pushing down what you're doing. Today, you need to be even more so inviting all the people around you to contribute and take an ownership in the decisions that are made and the outcomes because they will feel a sense of reward and ownership from that. And I
Hmm.
think the leaders that dismiss that and think that it's, that the ones that have an ego, let's just call it that, are missing out on a lot. And I think they're those same people that other people won't follow.
Yeah. So how do you think like, you get out of that route? Like, because I had leaders like that before too, where it was like they kind of just this is the way that we're doing it, and that's the way that we're doing it. Period. But how do you kind of one like if you were that person, how do you kind of like start to get out of that? Because I know it's like you're kind of in that world, and that's because the way that you're kind of have been wired for so long, so it's hard to change. Like, what can they do to change? And then the second question to that then is, if you have a boss that's like that, what can you do to help them kind of just get with the times and help them kind of improve their leadership styles?
Let's take the first one first. I'm the leader that has these, I'll call them issues, as it relates to not being engaging or feeling like you own all the decisions. I think that's obviously someone that's not very self aware, right? And I think if you look around you, you'll see these markings that will tell you something's not right. Retention of people on your team. They won't want to work with you. They'll leave, right? I think really smart leaders do assessments of, 360-degree feedback, right? Let me do
Hmm.
an anonymous, I'm not driving it, someone else is facilitating it, anonymous feedback of my team. So I could become more aware of my tendencies, good or bad. What can I do to be the most effective leader? Now, the egotistical leader is probably not thinking that. But you will see those signs of departures, lack of alignment, poor executives on your team that are just not representing your mission and vision. And that should be the leading signs of something's not right. But what a leader can do is be more open to being self aware, getting feedback. I wouldn't expect someone to be bold enough to come to them and say, listen, I just want to give you this feedback. You're really a horrible leader. And here's why. But if given the opportunity in an anonymous setting to provide some feedback, and I really believed it was anonymous, I would want to help that person. So the leader can do a lot of things to change their style. Person that's working for the leader, look, I feel like back to everyone's got a voice and have a point of view. I'm not naive either, but I do think that put the right way in a tactful way, you could have some of those conversations. I'd really like more autonomy. I'd like an opportunity. Can I lead a project going forward? Here's what I would do with it. If you need these things to kind of, feel more comfortable that I'm the guy, this is what I would propose. So, advocate for yourself, express that you want a different kind of interaction. You have to do it in a tactful way, obviously. You're not going to go in and say, listen, you're a horrible leader. And, I really don't like working for you. As soon as I find a new opportunity, I'm leaving. No, you're going to be like, listen, like, I want this to work out. And you don't say that, but find ways to broach the subject tactfully, expressing what your need is. Now, that leader may completely ignore it, and that's fine. Then I always believe that we're never victims. We always have an opportunity to solve a problem, to do something, to make a decision, whatever. If that's not working, and I try that, and I try it 2, 3 times, it's going to be very clear. I need to either move to a different department or leave the organization.
Mm-hmm.
One of the two, because that doesn't work for me, right? So I highly encourage people to be in a positive, stimulating environment where they can thrive and they really appreciate being in the space that they're in. That's why I think culture is so critically important in organizations.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, culture can make the difference between a great job or just a mediocre to poor job. So absolutely, culture is huge, and I love like where yeah, you're not a victim and you do have control of, where you sit within the organization. You have control over how you handle the situation. And sometimes you do need to manage up. But I love like how you're thinking about approaching that too. Is like, hey, I would love to have a little bit more autonomy. I would love to feel empowered here. Would you give me a little bit more leeway within this particular lane to see how it goes? And those questions of like, but what do you need to see from me to feel like I can handle that? Like just asking those right questions and just having a constructive conversation with your boss, that even goes a long way because they're going to start to think about you differently. Then your personal brand's going to really flourish at that point because most likely like I don't want to say egotistical boss, but the person that's like, hey, this is just their way. They're on the disc analysis. They are just the big D, right? They're all about being the
Absolutely.
director.
They're
Yeah,
a strong D.
yeah, they're
Don't
strong.
ask me how my weekend was. I don't want to know how you're doing today. Just let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Yeah, you can do this any way that you want, but just do it my way. That's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but if you're able to have those conversations, that strong D is going to see that and say, "Oh, I got it. This person, Rich, knows what he's doing. It's all good. And as long as he's doing the things that I need him to do, I'm going to give him a little bit more, a little bit more leash." So I think they're definitely a great way to handle the conversation, and constructively, rather than just going to your boss and say, "Hey, I need more space," or, "You're a slave driver." Like,
Yep.
yeah. Rich, is there anything else that leaders need to know to be more innovative in their organizations?
I think there's one big thing we didn't talk about that I'd like to share, and you framed it in as building your personal brand, and we did talk about authenticity and the relationships and networking and how being engaging can really drive a great outcome because you can work well with people and they see you for who you are. So that's how you show up every day. On the leadership front, an additional piece that I think is really important and has always been very important to me and my own personal brand is what's the legacy that you want to leave? What is the impact that you want to have on others? I always went into a job saying, my first priority is to obviously make a significant contribution, right? Show that I'm the right person to get the job done. I'm being entrusted to do that, but also leave the job better than I got it. I always went into a role saying, how can I make it better? The people in the group, what processes we improve, the actual results we get, new goals that we achieve, whatever it is. So what kind of impact are you going to have? That's your legacy. And I feel like that crosses over for me in my whole life. It's not just how do I show up as a leader and what impact can I have professionally? How can I have an impact personally? I truly want to make a difference in people's lives. That is branding, right? And it's not phony, hooey stuff. It's who I am, right? It's how I show up every day. That's something that's critically important to me. I want to be able to help other people without a scorecard. It's not, I did for you, now you do for me. It's, what can I do to help you? That carries over into coaching relationships, People I meet on LinkedIn just for relationships, no transactions. It's absolutely within my family, my kids and beyond, my wife, my extended family, my friends. That person, I think if they describe me, they say, he's someone who helps other people. They would absolutely say that. And I'm proud of that. And I think that's very important. So the last piece about leadership is what's the legacy that you're going to have? And I think it goes beyond I 10x the organization's growth.
Yes.
That's pretty awesome. Wow, amazing. But what did you do for people?
Yeah.
Did you also make a difference? Did people say, man, that was the best group I ever worked in? That person was an amazing leader. He made me the leader that I am today. What is it?
Hmm.
What is it you're doing that goes beyond business results?
Yeah. I think if someone was to ask, like, hey, um, Rich left the company 10 years ago, what did he, what do you remember about Rich? More than likely, they're not going to say that he 10x the business. More than likely, they're going to say how you made them feel, right? Oh,
100%.
Rich helped us really feel empowered and brought a new amazing culture to our organization, right? Those are the things that they're going to remember. So how do you make people feel? I think is so important, and I think is a really great reflective question for everybody to be challenged on after this episode. Is just to sit with your feelings for just a few minutes to say, how do I want people to remember me? Okay, what do I want them to feel 10 years after I leave this position? And I think that's a great place to start, especially you might not be there today and saying, okay, well, yeah, that's how I want to feel, but I'm not there. But now you have like this North Star that you can build up and say, now how am I going to build a plan that's going to make me the leader that's going to get to those results?
I really appreciate that question. That really hits home for me. I think it's about what kind of difference could you make, and I'm glad we talked about that. I think that's how you define yourself. I mean, you talk about the brand. I mean, that's your brand. I mean, it's who you
Yeah.
are. And some people, that's in them. And I would also say it's not the kind of thing you can fake either. You either
No.
have it or you don't.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
comes
You
across.
can't force a feeling onto somebody else. So it has to be true. That's the
Yes.
only way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Rich, thank you so much for being on the show today. This is a great conversation. I love that we went outside of the box of how we normally approach innovation. And these are important things, the soft skills that we don't talk about. So thank you so much for bringing the attention to it.
Yeah. I mean, I really enjoyed the conversation, Matt. It was great to see you, of course, but really good topic. And I'm glad we were able to talk about it. Thank you so
Awesome,
much.
Rich. And how can people reach out to you from here?
Yeah, so richbrunoconsulting.com. You can go to my website and find out more about what I do. I do executive coaching, I do business consulting, I do speaking, I work individually or in groups, and you can book a free session right on my website. Free 30-minute Zoom just so we can get to know each other more. And then LinkedIn, of course. You go to my LinkedIn, Rich Bruno, you'll find me there. And I love connecting with people without an intended outcome. Just you can't know. I had a mentor once say to me, "You can't know enough good people," and he's right. So
That is so true.
I am a relationship builder. I like to meet people and find ways that I can help them, even if they can't help me.
That's awesome, Rich. Yeah, definitely something that everyone should take advantage of. I'll put your links in the show notes so that it's nice and easy for everyone to get to. And definitely follow Rich on LinkedIn. His content has been on fire lately. Just all the videos of every single one of your speaking engagements has been amazing to watch. And the talk that you're doing about being about well-balanced leader too is
Yeah.
absolutely
Thank you.
a great topic and one that everyone needs to know about. So thanks again,
Thanks
Rich, for
so
being
much
on.
again. I really appreciated our conversation.
Of course.
Have a great day.
You too.
We have made it to the end of another episode. Thank you for tuning in. A couple of things before you go. If you have found value in this episode, I am sure you'll find value in what we have coming up. So please subscribe so you will have access and know when we launch the next episode. Also, leave a review. The more reviews we have, the further our reach becomes, and I truly want this to be heard by as many leaders as possible. Don't hog this all for yourself. I would love to hear your insights on this topic, so meet me on social media at Matt Mueller Innovation on LinkedIn and Instagram. And lastly, if you want to learn more about my story and what I can do for you and your company, go to themindfulinnovator.com. I would love to help you innovate on purpose. Until next time, just remember, bring a level of awareness to each conversation, each observation, each moment, and you can create great change in this world. Thank you.